know it's been a bit of a hot minute since I've been back. I've been traveling, seeing friends, getting busy with life. None of these are technically excuses as to why I haven't uploaded content, but at some point I started to feel overwhelmed with how far behind I had fallen with things like uploading content and doing the Beattober posts. But in the end, even if I've failed, even if I've fallen off the track, the only real thing I can do at this point is to start back up again, even if I'm falling behind, because it at least beats stopping and not doing anything. Now, enough of that. Let's get on with the video. For this track, I wanted to work completely without samples. I know that sampling is a bit of my personal hallmark, and it's something I really enjoy doing, but it's always good to practice and try out things you aren't as used to. Sometimes I think that I avoid playing actual music because I don't have confidence in my skills, such as composition or playing any sort of notes. But the only way I'm gonna ever get over that is to actually practice and work on it. So, for this track, I decided to try something that's called the Pomodoro effect. I think it has something to do with pasta and stuff like that. But essentially, you work for 30 minutes, and you keep that as a time limit, and you're supposed to take a 5-minute break. I happened to shoot this over the course of multiple days, which is why you'll see some changes along the way. But I wanted to keep every segment that I worked on under a 30-minute time limit, which is what you're going to see in the background with my phone. I don't have a lot of music theory knowledge, but I start off with an E minor chord, which is what you hear in the beginning, and I decided to add a little bit of spice, we'll call it. I don't know if it's a 7th or 9th or diminished or whatever any of those words mean, but it's not your standard E minor chord. Then I go into the C major chord, which is the second chord you hear in the back and forth between the E and the C. And after, I believe, 3 repetitions, that final C chord gets resolved with a bit of tension from that B minor sounding chord. And that forms the basis of the lick. As you can tell as I'm playing it, I sort of struggle to maintain good rhythm without a skeletal structure, something to follow. I have a pretty bad innate sense of rhythm, like really, really bad innate sense of rhythm. That's why I opt to lay down the drum track right here. I use this as a guide skeleton for me to jam over. Wait. Oh man, this is one of those like weird drum loops that I made that doesn't have the kick on the 1 and 3 and the snare on the 2 and the 4. This is probably the worst thing to follow along to. Let me go ahead and fix that real quick. Much better. With the drum skeleton down, now I can follow along to it and make sure that the rhythm I have in my head plays out the way I want it to. You're probably thinking, Joj, that sounds nothing like the finished melody. And you'd be right. I do a lot of effects processing on the main melody in order to add things like the EQ scoop using nitro or little bits of delay. And honestly, I've forgotten the entire list of effects that apply. You might be able to pick them out through the sped up footage. But in essence, I use a technique that I call tape juggling. Now, I didn't come up with this. I'm pretty sure I learned it from a YouTube video or a forum post or something. But essentially, the OP-1 has one master effects section for the 4-track tape. a way of adding effects onto a track without affecting the other tracks is to use the self-sampling feature, which is a little ear icon. Basically, you mute all the other tracks, leaving the one track you want affected, turn on the master's effect, dial in the amount that you want, and then you record to a subsequent blank track on the tape. Say, for example, here, I use 2 for the main melody, so therefore I record onto track 3. With resampling engaged, the affected version of track 2 with the master's effect gets recorded onto track 3. It's a bit cumbersome and has a lot of technical nuances you have to pay attention to. You have to turn off resampling. You have to turn off the effects after you record in order to hear what's going on. And it's a bit of a pain in the butt. But it's a very good workaround to getting affected tracks on the OP-1. Give it a sec. Give it a sec. Right there. That's where I record that B minor part. And yes, because I have to play it using the raw instrument, I have to go through the entire process of track juggling all the different effects just to make it sound like the rest of it. And in the end, it doesn't even sound quite like everything else. It's just slightly different. Here's a bit of a philosophical question. When do you know if something is done? When do you know something's at its best? I could polish this melody line for as long as I want, and it probably won't sound that much better than where it's at now, or it could sound a million times better. I don't know. All I know is, even till the very end, I'm still trying all sorts of wacky different things, strumming chords and other instruments to add to the melody line. In the end, this is what I end up having, and I'm okay with it. I think it was a decent effort for around 30 minutes.
Day 2.
So, a day has passed. I started playing lots of Zelda, Link's Awakening. I got very distracted, and I also realized that I put the timer in a really bad spot, not to mention it stops working at some point, so you can't even tell that I'm on the clock. So I'm just gonna zoom past all of this real quick and then get into explaining what the heck it is I'm doing. Look out, you're forgetting about the loop! Yep, it overdubbed itself. Take it from the top again. For the high end or the top end counter melody, or secondary melody, whatever you want to call it, I decided to use a string type instrument. I think it's called the koto string, or something along those lines. And it's a lot of the same techniques as what I did with the main piano melody. It's a lot of track juggling. It's a lot of applying effects. For this one, there's a lot more effects when it comes to the EQ scooping from nitro, to the delay, and then I'm pretty sure I also use the cow, moo. The cow, I don't even know what to call that effect. It's a multi-effect that has delay, phase, and other things built into it. It has 4 stomachs. Wow. So I'm not going to bore you with too much of that. Just know that even within the confines of 30 minutes, turns out I don't actually finish. And here's why. It came down to 2 of the mixed tracks, one clean and one dirty, essentially meaning having effects on it. And I couldn't quite tell which one I wanted to go with, so I wanted to blend the 2 together. Right at around the 30-minute mark, I was still figuring out how to blend the 2 of them. Will I figure it out? Will I be able to progress forward on this track? Find out next time. Actually, no, spoiler alert, I actually finish it. That's why there's even a video. Moving on.
One eternity later.
Last time on How It's Made, I was talking about how I was figuring out how to balance the two versions of the counter melody track. What did I have to do in the end? You must be wondering to yourself, or not, you already have 4 tracks and they're all filled. What are you going to do? Simple. I just had to move the drum track out of the track to give myself 1 empty track. Essentially, I repeat the track juggling process, and then I come to a final clean, dirty, mixed counter melody track. I also brew myself a nice cup of coffee and start reading The Woo by the Rizzo. If you're at all into his stuff, I highly recommend reading this book. Good coffee. After a little bit more fiddling, now we can move on to the drums. Now I know I originally picked this drum loop. I don't even know when I wrote it. This might have actually been the one I used in the Charlie Chaplin video. Link in the corner above to go see that one. But, sometimes you use the drum loop long enough, and sometimes you just get attached to the drum loop. So now that I've decided I want to stick with this loop, it's time to do some EQ sculpting to make it sit well with the rest of the track. As you can hear now, it's sort of too clean amongst the rest of the lo-fi, nitty-gritty, blown-out sounds. We have to make it blend in with the rest of its compatriots. It's gotta act as one unit. Some might even call it a G unit. Okay, that was a bad joke. I apologize for that. Anyways, on top of the EQ sculpting for the drums, I decided to just go around and try adding little bits here and there. Random extra clap noises, percussive elements. There's no real rhyme or reason. Obviously that it's all within rhythm, of course, but it's to add extra character to the drums. The drum beat is good as it is, but there's this weird balance between oversaturating your drum beats with random noises every single note, and sometimes not having enough noises to create a sense of atmosphere. By adding these random noises like clicks or different types of hi-hats or even other kicks and snares, you add more character to the beat. Now, like all things, just like when you add too much salt in cooking, you can certainly overdo this. So try it out. Add a little bit at a time, and if at any point any of your elements start to overtake the main overtake the main drum line, take it back or dial it back a little bit. Unlike cooking, you can totally remove these sounds, unlike the salt inside your salty pasta. At this point, I also begin planning out my performance, whether that's when to loop, what effects to use, how the drops or the transitions will be. I'm pretty freeform about it. My usual go-tos at this point are a combination of certain EQ filters, the tape stop effect, or track soloing. I know, I said I wasn't gonna use any samples, but I just accidentally stumbled on my chops for Sun Lux's Lost It to Trying. Great song, by the way. It was sampled by Fall Out Boy. I know, I said bass part, not octave pitched up sample part. What is wrong with me? There is not a whole lot to get into on this bass part. It's basically a variation of what you just heard, if that can even be considered music. but tuned back down, like a bass part should be, lower in pitch than the rest of the instruments. Beyond that, I applied the usual suspect EQ sculpting from Nitro, and maybe a little bit of reverb here and there. What I really want to talk about with the last few moments of the video is my inclusion of the Pokemon intro plus parts of episode 1 in the main performance video. This is a bit of a nostalgia video, and as I pointed out earlier, I recently got the new Switch Lite, the Pokemon Edition 1, and it started to make me feel a little bit nostalgic. Playing old Zelda games certainly didn't help that, and for a second it made me feel like, in a weird way, being a kid again. The whole getting overwhelmed with new exciting releases of video games. I might be dating myself a little bit here, but I remember when Pokemon came out, not the new generations, when it literally reached the US. Boy, did that series change me and many, many, many untold dollars that I would spend on it. Overall, I love the franchise, and I hope it continues till, I don't know, forever, maybe. It's never a good idea to get hung up on the past, but every now and then, it might be a good idea to just take a look back and go take a trip down nostalgia lane. That's gonna be it. That's 30 minutes, and that means that the track has been fully made. If you've made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you very, very, very much. What kind of series, games, or cartoons do you guys feel nostalgic about? Let me know in the comments. And again, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, consider leaving a thumbs up. If you want to catch more, consider subscribing. Until next time, see you guys later.